Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Today's conversation is a doozy. It's a good one. We're going to be talking about the metabolic effects of intermittent fasting in patients with type 2 diabetes and how they exist in the short term but disappear after its discontinuation. A systematic review and meta-analysis of randomized controls trials by Fanjun Liu et al. In the Nutrition Research of 2025. So this is a brand new article that just came out, and it fits perfectly into our lexicon in the Fasting for Life. So if you are new to the podcast, welcome in. Thanks for giving us a shot. Thanks for listening in. We'll give you some actionable steps on how to adapt a fasting lifestyle and put things you can do starting today into your fasting journey. Happy to have you with us. If you want to know more about how fasting transformed our lives, why we do what we do, and how this study is not just for diabetics, but it is for all of us, head back and listen to episode 0, episode 1, get some more insight into who we are and why we do what we do each and every week, why we have our challenges, why we have all the free resources. All the links are in the show notes. So if you're looking for more support, on our website, thefastingforlife.com as well. So happy to have you with us on this fasting lifestyle journey. If you're a long-term listener, shout out to you. Thank you for continuing to listen in. Your comments, your rates, your reviews, your downloads, your subscribes, that all helps the podcast gods and goddesses know that we are bringing value to you week in and week out, and that is ultimately what we want to do. So Tommy, as we dive into this study today, we want to talk about long-term sustainability. We always say, if you're new to the podcast, we say this often, begin with the end in mind. We don't want a diet. We don't want on-off mentality. It's easy to do with fasting. One day you're on, the next day you're off, right?
Sure.
The weekend comes, Monday comes, you're starting over again. Right? You make some progress, you lose some weight, you're doing your exercise, and all of a sudden the wheels fall off and 6 months go by and you go, wait a minute, how do we get to 2026? What happened? So we want to talk about the sustainability piece, and this study perfectly highlights the long-term lifestyle adaptation of fasting, and it's going to be applied, obviously, from the study perspective to type 2 diabetics, but we're going to extrapolate that out to no matter where you are on your blood sugar, weight loss, health, or longevity journey, right?
Yeah, so when we're thinking about beginning with the end in mind, what's easy to do is think of, hey, I have a problem here that I'd like to solve, whether it's type 2 diabetes or prediabetes or a little bit of blood sugar mismanagement, or maybe just a little bit of extra weight around the midsection. Maybe it's low testosterone, maybe it's PCOS, maybe it's hormonal imbalance during perimenopause. Whatever it might be that you're trying to get a hold of and fix. What's easy to do is think, I have a problem, what's my solution? Okay, and if you're coming to fasting, then you're thinking, okay, fasting might be the solution for me. This might help. I've heard it's been helpful for maybe friends or family. And then the next logical step might be, okay, and once I fix that problem, then I won't have to worry about it anymore. And that's kind of, that feels like a tempting way to think about it, but it usually doesn't apply for things like anything metabolically related, anything physiologically related, because the issue that we created or that was created within our physiology over years and decades is typically, it's fairly easy to recreate, unfortunately, even after we put a patch on it or get it under balance and under control. So there's a level of vigilance that's required for long-term sustaining of that solution. And also what you want to keep in mind is, while you're walking out the solution, while you're doing the fasting to get the weight off or to get the blood in balance and to fix your physiology, we're going to need to adapt those same tools so we can apply them later on, but in a different application for maintenance purposes, whether that's weight maintenance or blood sugar maintenance, or potentially probably both. we're going to be applying the same tools, but in a different way. Maybe you might say in a less aggressive way, or in a less, in like a less of a degree between fat loss to weight maintenance, let's say. Because when we're maintaining that level of balance in the body, we might not need overnight fast. We might not need these, 30 or 40-hour fasts to do that, but we are still going to need consistency and long-term sustainability within our fasting lifestyle.
And that's all we talk about in coaching and our challenges is what are those foundational habits? What is that lifestyle change? You can simply put adding a glass of water before your coffee in the morning into your habits on a day-to-day basis within a few weeks. But lifestyle adaptation, and what we see in the statistics is, people will lose a substantial amount of weight, anywhere from, 5, 10, 15, 20% of their body weight, and then they regain it within that 2 to 3 year mark, 95% of the population.
Because they didn't have that end in mind.
They didn't have the end in mind,
right? Sustainability is not there, yeah.
Yep, that long-term sustainability piece. So why does it matter, and why does this matter to everybody listening for a fasting lifestyle enthusiast? Well, the reality is the current state of where we are globally and here in the U.S. is 38 million Americans, so about 11.5% of the U.S. population, has diagnosed diabetes. There's another almost 9 million folks that are undiagnosed. So 23% of American adults with diabetes are unaware they have it. And then there's 98 million people, so 38% of the U.S. adult population that have prediabetes. So we're talking, quick math, 50 million Americans.
Wow.
If we look at global rates, 589 million, 11% of the adult global population, about 1 in 9 adults are living with diabetes. There's 252 million people globally that are undiagnosed. So now we're at 850 million folks that have some form of prediabetes or diabetes. So diabetes is a progression. That undiagnosed category in the US, that almost 100 million folks, this isn't something that just one day, boom, you got diabetes, right? I got the diabetes.
Right.
No. It's something that's progressive over the years, which is why it's no longer called adult onset. And now we're seeing staggering statistics in kids. We did an episode just a few weeks ago on this about the deleterious effects, because it starts with excess weight. It starts with fatigue. It starts with post-lunch crashes. It starts with poor sleep. It starts with your labs slightly being off. Your liver enzymes are a little elevated. Your cholesterol ticks up. Your blood pressure is starting to elevate. And then that leads into metabolic dysfunction or metabolic syndrome, where you're actually diagnosed with those things. Your panels are off. Your blood pressure is high. You now have metabolic syndrome. Then that leads to prediabetes, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and early all-cause mortality. So the point here is we're going to look at the study because it really highlights the need for long-term change, habit formation, long-term lifestyle adaptation. The results in the study, if you are one of those folks that has that stuff going on, what is that? An ounce of, what is it,
prevention.
Tommy?
Yeah, an ounce
of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about how we can manage this. If you're in the case of needing to reverse it, absolutely. But let's prevent it. Let's manage it from a day-to-day lifestyle adaptation. So let's get into some of the outline of the study and what the benefits were, because it was really cool to see what these different groups accomplished in the short-term studies. So they looked at 12. So here's the question. Does intermittent fasting produce both short and long-term metabolic effects in adults with type 2 diabetes? And are these effects sustained after discontinuing? Right? The scenario we don't want that we've been talking about.
Yeah, but we can apply that same question to any level of blood sugar management or mismanagement, whether you're prediabetes or undiagnosed prediabetes, or just you have a history of it and maybe a little bit of blood sugar mismanagement or a little excess weight, a little weight loss resistance, if you will, if it's kind of tricky or getting trickier to get the weight off over time. That's a sign of, you could say that's a sign of pre-diabetes or pre early onset blood sugar mismanagement. Right. It's a sliding scale. Think of it as a big sliding scale rather than on-off switch for diabetes specifically.
Yep, absolutely. So let's look at it. 12. So it's a systematic review and meta-analysis of 12 randomized controlled trials, 966 participants with type 2 diabetes. The researchers evaluated various fasting protocols, so time-restricted eating, which just means you are shortening the amount of time that you consume nutrition during your day, fast-mimicking diets, periodic fasting, which is kind of the 5-2 alternate day. I'll do a 24-hour fast here, and then a couple days of normal eating, and then another fast here, right? So periodic fasting.
Yeah.
Against standard interventions, so continuous calorie energy restriction, a Mediterranean diet, standard medical diabetes care, so ADA type stuff, American Diabetes Association type recommendations, and an ad libitum diet. So really just do what you want, and we'll track your progress, right?
Okay.
So they were looking at accessing the less than 3 month and long-term greater than 3 month benefits on glycemic control, weight, lipid profile, and safety, okay? So what were the results in the short term? Significant reductions in A1C, significant reductions in fasting plasma glucose or fasting blood sugar, right? Where you fast overnight and you go get the lab done the next morning, and significant reductions in body weight. Okay, so check, check, check. All the things that we would love to see, and we've seen, you know, article after article in the research that the benefits of fasting when it comes to metabolic function for diabetics, specifically related to body weight and blood sugar. Also, the good cholesterol, the HDL went up, and the bad, air quotes, bad cholesterol went down.
Excellent.
All of those early markers, right, on that cascade that we mentioned, right, of the development of diabetes, cardiovascular issues, metabolic syndrome, etc. However, after greater than 3 months and stopping the fasting protocols, the benefits on A1C, fasting blood sugar, and body weight did not persist. These parameters returned to pre-intervention levels or were no longer statistically different than the control groups.
I believe it.
However, go ahead.
I believe it.
How interesting, right?
Yeah. And it completely corresponds with what we know as far as the long-term weight loss management data, that 95% of people who get the weight off won't keep it off. And it's because of these same things, because of taking your eye off the prize. It's a matter of maintaining or not maintaining vigilance in the process to actually continue with the benefits of what you were doing differently. Because otherwise, it's not just tempting to return to old habits, it's also very easy physiologically for your body to find that old rhythm again. The same problems that you developed under the surface and physiologically before are very easy to recreate. They won't take those same decades to recreate. They can happen very, very quickly in a matter of months and usually less than years, or maybe just a couple of years, wherever it may have taken decades to develop those problems before. And so that's where the difference is. And if you don't take that with you on the beginning part of your fasting journey or your healing journey, then it can be tough to, kind of change directions and get that level of vigilance later, unless you see the evidence of these kind of things like this right here.
And this is what we call the rebound effect, right? So why do the metrics return to baseline after stopping? Well, that just comes down to habit change and sustainability, right? Beginning with the end in mind. Have you been able to rewire your subconscious, your relationship with food, your stress management, your sleep hygiene, your ability to navigate social situations and loved ones that have the best intentions when they bring over the brownies, right? Or they invite you out to an impromptu lunch, or how do you adapt your fasting? And it's no different than eating vegan or carnivore, right? Far opposite ends of the spectrum. You need to be able to adapt that when you go out and you interact with the real world. Right. So this rebound effect it's not, this isn't some big aha, some like, whoa, moment, right? Like, yeah, if you stay consistent, you're going to see the result. However, it did find that IF compared to standard dietary restriction, it finds that it's not inferior. It actually finds it's a little bit better because it offers more flexibility. And the time restricted eating often yields the best short term results, right? That's what we saw in the data. But again, the adherence and the personal preference matter in the adaptation of it into your lifestyle.
So when you talk about personal preference, I mean, what I hear there is, like, there's no perfect way to do a one meal a day, like an OMAD. So are earlier meals better than later meals? Yes, physiologically they're better. However, socially speaking, usually later meals mean more social opportunities.
Yeah, dinner with the
So
family.
yeah, dinner with the family, sure. Dinner opportunities, dates, opportunities abound, typically later, during the more quiet times of the day, oftentimes. Um, and so being able to understand that and being able to say yes to some of those opportunities whenever they come up, and still maintaining your fasting lifestyle. Maybe, for me lately with a newborn, I've been basically no dinners for a while because I really want to protect that sleep and the insulin effect of.
Yeah, any amount you can get.
Yes, yes, for sure. I want it to be as high a quality as possible, and I know that later meals means more insulin response later in the day. My
Yep.
sleep will suffer because of it. It doesn't mean that I'll wake up just feeling like trash, or that I'm not getting any real sleep right now. But what it means is I'm really trying to protect it and optimize it as much as possible. So that's my lifestyle adaptation right now. But if I was looking at things within my fasting lifestyle without any level of flexibility, just trying to do dinner to dinner to dinner to dinner, OMAD dinners, which we hear a lot as like a mainstay or kind of a default for a lot of
A
folks.
preferred default. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I wouldn't really be able to roll with the punches during this season of life for me and maintain a level of sanity, energy, and feeling like control, relative control over both the scale and how I'm feeling day to day.
Yep. I want to share two personal anecdotes here.
Okay.
One is just something that happened recently. Grandma and grandpa are in town, and I went and took my son to get a haircut.
Mm.
And he loves going to this place, and it's one of those like men's haircut places, and they have like
Oh,
the
that's
fancy
cool.
massage chairs, and
Yeah.
it's really affordable too, which is cool.
Nice.
I don't tend to get my hair cut too often. I'm more kind of simple to the point. Wake up, it's dark out, don't need to look in the mirror, and I just go for the day.
Right.
That's how I like to live. Luckily, my wife likes it, so I
Yeah.
continue to do it.
Right.
So I took him, and dinner was being made, and we were having the HEB gluten-free turkey burgers for dinner,
Hmm.
and we had some leftover cold resistant starch. There was some, baked potatoes, white potatoes. My kids love them with the
Hmm.
Kerrygold butter, and there was some things. So I was like, all right, great. I'll come home, dinner will be ready. So my wife made an entire box of turkey burgers. And so I had my two turkey burgers ready to eat. And then the kids had already started eating because we got back late. And then I heard, hey, Dad, can I have more turkey burger? Sure. So I cut one of mine in half, gave it to my daughter.
Hmm.
My son, hey, Dad, can I have more turkey burger? Great. Gave that to my second child.
Yeah.
Third child, hey, Dad, can I have more turkey burger? Okay. So I ended up like, all right, fine. I did plan on eating dinner with the family. So I went back into the fridge, grabbed this is that whole dinner conversation, grabbed the leftover meatballs that we made, right?
Hmm.
I was like, all right, great. I'll just heat these up, throw a little Parmesan cheese, a little sauce on them, good to go. Hey, Dad, can I have some meatballs? So at this point, as part of my lifestyle adaptation, I was like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to fast. I'm just going to continue fasting. I've been fasting all day.
Hmm.
Made an element water with a little salt and electrolytes, sat down, enjoyed dinner. I was a little annoyed in the moment, not going to lie.
Right.
And then I went to bed that night, and the stomach started to grumble. And I was like, crap. I wasn't mentally prepared to go to bed on a 24-hour fast. And if some of you have done this, you know that your sleep is like your stomach has other ideas, right, for your
Right.
sleep
Right.
that night. So toss and turn, toss and turn. I finally get up. I was like, all right, let me do the salt. So I did a half a teaspoon of Redmond's in some water, chugged it, went back and laid down, and finally fell asleep.
Nice.
So
Okay.
the thing is I that's an adaptation, right? That's a long-term tool or skill from a fasting tool belt. There was
Mhm.
no need for me to put the kids to bed and then come down and make myself dinner at 8:30 at night.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What was your
But that
thought? Like, I know that had to be a thought though, right? Like
oh,
I
it
could
was.
I
Oh,
could
I
have
thought
some
about it.
food right now. And then
Yeah.
so why didn't you what didn't you want to happen at that moment when you didn't have any food?
Well, I knew the next day, today, that I had 3 hour podcast record, 3.5 hour podcast record block,
Yeah.
and I have 6 coaching calls back to back to back to back to back until 5 o'clock. So I was like, if I eat late, I'm just not gonna be great tomorrow. It's a busy day. I don't need it, right? So woke up feeling fantastic today, back on track. So this is what we're talking about in this long-term kind of like start stop. Those little lifestyle interventions, those little curveballs, right? In the application of a fasting lifestyle are typically that on-off mentality. Because one of the things that the study showed was long-term IF, when continued, still led to statistically significant benefits in A1C, blood sugar, and body weight. So when do we get on? When are we on? When are we off? Well, the long-term adaptation is reverse engineering. Okay, what's my goal? And this happened when, I'll try to keep this one a little shorter. When I first came to fasting in June of, I'd done some intermittent fasting and keto prior to this, but in June of 2019, standing in your kitchen on Father's Day, and I'd noticed you had lost about 30 pounds. And I was like, man, what are you, like, okay, you got a medical background, master's in physiology, degree in psychology. I was like, put me on the couch. Put me on the couch in your clinic. Put me in the patient chair. What are you doing? And you handed me the obesity code. I went home, I read it that night cover to cover, and I started fasting. I lost 48.5 pounds in 50 days. Was my journey over?
Right.
Had I reversed my insulin resistance, undiagnosed pre-diabetic, and I'd been searching for years, trying to figure out why my labs are elevating, why I couldn't lose the belly fat, why I was tired all the time, all that stuff that I mentioned in the beginning on the progression of, you know, all of the symptomatology and lab changes to metabolic syndrome, to prediabetes, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, to eventual all-cause mortality, right?
Yep.
So I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, it didn't. So then I regained some of it. Right? Regained about 22 of the initial 50. Then I had a surgery. I lost it again. Then I had a surgery, regained about 15. Then I lost that. So it's this adaptation, this long-term application, the long-term fasting, when continued, led to statistically significant benefits in A1C and body weight, where I am living now.
Wow.
So it's this mindset that we need to just shift to what is sustainable for you. Right? The benefits fade after stopping, just like they fade after stopping lifting weights. You see the decrease in muscle growth, right?
Sure.
So this cycling on and off, they even say it in the study, may not give sustained improvements. Well, duh. Long-term regimens, long-term consistency will give you the glycemic and weight loss benefits comparable to those standard dietary strategies every single time. So how do we get it? If it's not a one-size-fits all, how do we get it to apply to you? Well, you need repetitions. You need trial. You need failing forward. You need to figure out what works for you. You need to be present time awareness in your decisions around your relationship with food and the foods you're choosing to eat when you do have your nutrition windows, right?
Yeah. You also need some personalization along the process too, because everybody's different and everybody's history and physiology is different. Also, every step of your fasting journey can be a little bit different too, because that initial fat loss that you might be, aiming towards is usually the easiest part. It's usually the part where you're the highest motivated, but you also have the worst habits. You also have the most room for error because your caloric burn rate is at its highest because you're potentially at your highest weight that you will be as well. And so things tend to get a little bit trickier as you get closer and closer and closer to your forever number, your maintenance goal, whatever that looks like. You have the smaller margin of error. You have a slower caloric burn rate at that point. So it's really, really helpful to keep in mind the lasting benefits that you're kind of setting the stage for as you push forward into more consistency within your fasting lifestyle, but with an eye towards, okay, what would I do? We call a pause for purposes of gaining that confidence over regain, for example. We call that a momentary maintenance. So
that's much better than the dreaded plateau.
The dreaded plateau, right? When you think about it, when you take control over a period of maintenance, whether it's a couple of days or a week or maybe it's a month, where you're just looking to say, hey, what about if I just stopped my fat loss phase right here for a moment and just try out something that's been working to see if I can maintain a level of control over the scale. So rather than getting frustrated at the scale because it's stopped and I feel like I'm at a plateau, nothing's working right now, all of these kind of negative self-talk phrases that easily kind of come into our brain. Instead of that, what if we just took a deliberate, intentional moment to say, well, you know what? This is a momentary maintenance for myself. So why don't I go the next week or two and see if I can just maintain a level of control over the scale in a way that feels like, yeah, I could do that. If I needed to do that for life or for months or for years, I could do that. That what happens at the end of that is a real mindset shift. It- Things are still improving physiologically speaking, but I think the mindset shift is much more important because for me at the beginning of my fasting journey especially, I had a lot of I had a very low confidence with regain. I was very skeptical that as soon as I stopped doing everything, the weight was just going to immediately like come back on. And so I was really like, I wasn't scared of it. I was just very confident that that would be the case. So it took a bunch of little momentary maintenances so that I could just gain some confidence in this level of control because it felt like too good to be true. That some 20 or 25 pounds had finally come off that I was having trouble for the last 2 or 3 years to get that off at this point.
And we hear that often too. We tend to focus on the things we don't do well. We focus on the negative. Oh, I broke my fast early. Oh, I kept my window open too late. Oh,
Mm,
I made bad food choices.
mm,
We really need to make sure that we double down and focus on when we hit these momentary maintenances where it's not all going perfect and it's not all roses, like my example of dinner last night,
mm.
right? That we focus on the things that we can control, the things that improve our long-term goals, right? Our long-term sustainability, and really focus on the wins because that allows you to stay enough on track so you don't go backwards.
Great point.
So we tend to focus on the negative. And this used to happen when I ran clinics. We'd always have our monthly team meeting and we had metrics and KPIs and things we would track. And the staff would always want to start, especially if they were new, they'd always want to start with well, this isn't where this, and we didn't hit our numbers. And I'm like, no. Our goal was 50. We got to 48. Why are we not celebrating that we got to 48? What did we do well in getting to the 48 new patients for that month? What did we do well in the 12 testimonials that we got, even though our goal was 15? So what? We missed 3. Who cares?
Right.
Yes, we want to look at where the gaps were, but we want to double down on the positive things that we've done in those improvements. And when you get stuck in the scale, the expectation of your efforts is not matching the number on the scale, there's either one of two things happening. Either you're in one of these places where your expectations are too high and you expect the scale just to be a downward slope, like a straight downward line,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not taking into account for all those things that affect that number, that silly little number that taps into your identity on a day-to-day basis, right? We need to focus on the positive things. When you get to these momentary maintenances or you get to these plateaus, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We need to focus on the things that you're doing well, double down on them, and don't try to continually push and add and extend the fasts and make all of these big, grandiose statements of I'm never going to eat this again or I'm never going to do that again, because that guilt shame cycle, when we get stuck, really undermines the long-term result-based goal that you want. So we need simple daily action steps. And that's why we have the resources. That's why we have the blueprint to fasting for fat loss, the links in the show notes. That's why we do the challenges, because most of the time we talk about this long-term sustainability. So the diabetes, pre-diabetes starting point of today's conversation, yeah, great. You might not be there. Well, let's never have you end up having to solve for that problem, right? If you are there, you have a solution. In the short-term numbers prove it. And they even say in the long term, if you stick with it, the stick with it ability, if that's a word, I just made it one, is really what's going to give you that long-term change.
Well, back at the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned being an enthusiast, and I heard you say something about fasting enthusiasts. So I want to give a shout out to the fasting quiz that's on the website right now.
Oh, yeah.
Because the fasting enthusiast is one of the fasting types that's like an outcome
Your
from
fasting
the quiz.
persona, so to
Your
speak.
fasting persona, exactly. And so within the fasting enthusiast, which we've hit on several of these points during this conversation, but in short, it says you're excited about the potential of fasting. You might have a wealth of knowledge about it, but you may be struggling to consistently put that knowledge into practice. And that's absolutely one of the underlining points of today's conversation, which is continually putting that knowledge into practice, because the knowledge doesn't get you the end result that you want. It's the doing that's going to lead to it. And the doing can't stop just because you hit the finish line that you initially set out for. Because if and when you do hit that finish line goal, whether it's balancing the blood work or getting to a certain number on the scale or a certain body composition metric, that's fantastic. You should celebrate it. But at the same time, you should also be mindful that it's time to stay vigilant on a new set of maintenance goals at that point. It's not time to go, okay, well, the fasting thing was cool and it worked for me, and now I can go back to what I was doing back whenever I was creating that problem. No, it's time to kick in the adaptation method that you want to be working on before you get to that point. So always be thinking long term that I want to be adapting these tools so I can use them for life, not just to solve this one problem at this one point in time.
And we have so many testimonials, dozens and dozens and dozens of examples, with coaching, where people they'll come in, husband and wives will lose 100 pounds, 80 pounds, 50 pounds, off medications, decrease pain, adding walking and exercise in, and then, we'll see them transpire into this place where it's like, all right, well, I've got the tools, now let me go do it. And so many times we hear, and we love this, we gave a shout out on the last podcast of someone who had success for multiple years, right? Multiple years. Penniless 57, I believe.
Yes.
Multiple years of success, and then a 2-year break, and lost 60 pounds initially and then regained 20. Well, the good news is, let's celebrate the fact that you didn't regain the other 40.
Yeah, that's
huge. Here you are,
huge,
in real time on your journey. What actions, what decisions, what was working, how you get back on track. That's the most important thing for long-term success, is this wonderful word that is not some magic pixie dust or fairy dust or magic easy button, but the word consistency, right? And the problem we see with this is impatience. The impatience in the process is what gets you frustrated and has you fall off, right? But impatience is a form of resistance.
Absolutely.
You're resisting the process. So we want to make it fun. Leverage the podcast, grab a resource, add to the Facebook community, come in and do a challenge with us, and just get a fire hose of a week or 2 weeks with us, where we're going to take you through an accelerated kind of conversation around how do we make this a long-term strategy. Because Tommy, as we wrap up, remember, when it comes to making meaningful, lasting changes for your health, consistency is ultimately the key. Intermittent fasting is a powerful tool. You need repetitions, you need skills, you need adaptability. But it's truly long-term habits that make the difference.
Oh, agreed. Couldn't agree more.
100% of the time. So until next episode, stay curious, stay empowered, and keep living your fasting lifestyle. Tommy, as always, man, I appreciate the conversation, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.